You're watching Medal of Honor with Dave Wallace, the sexiest man alive. Is that good now?
Alright, for this edition of Honored Metal, we're going to do something a little different again. Basically, instead of, usually I do something that is fairly new as far as a release of something that's, a classic, but it's just kind of been re-released. This one actually was released about a year ago, actually, but I thought it was special because it's actually only about 2 weeks away as I record this, maybe 3 weeks, from the 15-year anniversary of the original release of this album. Also, I just fucking love this album. One of the few times that I would describe a band that is, in some ways, considered death metal as beautiful. This is definitely just amazing music. It is the Swedish death/progressive metal band Opeth, and this is the Ghost Reveries album. Now, what's the point of the re-release is actually a company that's called Music on Vinyl. They kind of take select albums that they like and they kind of make more of the audiophile version of it, so it's usually just a nice high quality recording, higher grain album, and just usually double album. They usually kind of focus on the audio part the most, but nice packaging as well. And this album actually came out originally on Roadrunner in 2005. I believe it was August 30th was the original release date, and just a phenomenal album. It's actually, because it was the first with Roadrunner, their 8th album actually altogether. This is when they really started to get attention from the American audience because of the distribution from Roadrunner. Now, as I said, Opeth, they are a Swedish band, and they were established in 1989. However, there actually are no original members of this band still remaining. Now, the driving force of Opeth and the just creative mastermind behind the whole thing since 1992 has been Michael Eckerfeldt. But yeah, he didn't come until 1992. He was actually only 16 when he joined the band. I say joined, but interesting enough, he actually was brought in by their original vocalist to be a replacement bass player for the bass player that he was going to kick out of the band. Now, he invited Michael over to practice, did not tell the original bass player or any of the other band members that he invited Michael to come over to replace him, and basically a fight ensued. The rest of the band quit, and Michael and the original vocalist decided to carry on the name of Opeth, which, by the way, I believe means City of Moonlight. But anyway, after a little while, I guess the two egos didn't get along too much longer, and eventually it just became Michael's band, which I kind of like that. You go in and you just take what you want, and that's a pretty metal attitude, right? He kind of took over. He saw the name, I guess, and kept with it, and has done a lot with it. Now, the band's debut album, Orchid, was released in 1995 on Candlelight Records. And like I said, they did 7 albums on Candlelight Records before finally getting the deal with Roadrunner, and that's when they released this album, Ghost Reveries. And then, of course, they continued on and have released some phenomenal albums since then, and they are still putting out albums, as a matter of fact. They've done 13 altogether, the latest being In Cauda Venenum. So they're still doing stuff, and looking forward to hearing more from them in the future. Now, of this album, as I said, this is just something absolutely incredible about this band. I mean, for one thing, they're considered to be a progressive band, and yes, they do have a death metal side. Definitely have the death metal vocals at times. But they're not chained down by that. Michael's voice, Michael, by the way, is now the vocalist, he's the guitarist, and he is the songwriter. He's the band, really. I mean, if we're just being honest. Phenomenal musicians all around, of course, but it's kind of his project now. And his creativity is insane, and he is capable of doing the death metal vocals, but he also has a very soothing, clean singing voice. And in fact, I believe they've actually done a couple albums where they actually didn't even put any death vocals on there. So it's kind of basically what he's feeling at the time. That's what he does, and I find that very admirable. The album that followed this one actually was called Watershed, reached number 23 on the Billboard chart, so that's actually a pretty good for a band, especially for a progressive band of any kind. In total so far they've sold 1.5 million albums worldwide, so they're not doing too bad. Now, of this album, Decibel magazine once described this, I gotta read this quote to you because it's exactly how I feel about it. They described it as achingly beautiful, sometimes unabashedly brutal, often a combination of both. Definitely a very fitting description of this album. So many styles infused in this. I mean, there's elements of blues and jazz and classical, and obviously a lot of progressive in there. So just definitely a musician's band also. And again, this is the album where I discovered them. Like I said, a lot of people in America, this is where they found out about Opeth, was really more just thanks to Roadrunner getting them out there. But because it's where I came in, then obviously it just becomes my favorite album. And this is one of those albums where I never get tired of listening to it. The diversity on this album is so great. And one of the ways I've always been able to tell that is, I'm a professional tattoo artist, and a lot of times when I'm working, if I have this album playing in the background, it's kind of one of those albums where from song to song, my customer will say, "Wait, this is the same band?" Yeah, it's the same band. It's so diverse that it's oftentimes hard to tell. So let's talk about this particular album, Ghost Reveries. So one of the interesting facts about this album is that it was originally intended to be a concept album. As you know, we've talked about this on other episodes, but concept album is basically, it's one long story that runs throughout the whole album, connecting each song into different chapters of that story. Now the story was actually kind of interesting. Michael actually wrote this story. He kind of was delving a little bit into, well, at least what he considered to be Satanism, or really it's more about kind of devil worship. But adding to the depth of that story is the trauma that this man's main character in the story goes through after he kills his own mother, and then ends up dealing with the emotional struggle with that, and then also selling his soul to the devil himself. He actually kills his mother thinking that that's what she did, and then he ends up following in her footsteps. It's an interesting story, but however, it actually didn't quite play out as far as a full concept album. As he was writing, some of the other songs just kind of took on their own life, and he kind of went with that. So several of the songs in here, quite a bit of them actually, do follow that storyline. It's just that they don't all necessarily link together. And you're not necessarily missing that if you're listening to the album. You're not necessarily catching that it's one continuous story, but if you know the story, then you can hear different parts that make it obvious that it came from that. So the opening track on this is Ghost of Perdition. This is one of those songs that came from the original story concept. It pretty much picks up right at the beginning with him struggling with the emotional trauma after killing his own mother. Perdition is the state of eternal suffering. So that's basically what the Ghost of Perdition is about. Great opening track. Track number 2 is Baying of the Hounds. Nice brutal track, but also has some beautiful melodies and interesting kind of 60s, 70s organ played along with it in parts as well. Baying of the Hounds is actually based on the play Comus, written by John Milton. Now, in the story of Comus, it basically has to do with a woman who is in distress, lost in the woods, and she is sort of seduced by an ominous character in the play. The character is Comus. Now, this is actually not comics is just based on that, this song Bang of the Hounds, and we aren't really told who the ominous character is. However, in the play comics, she gets away, whereas in this song, maybe not so much. Track number 3 is Beneath the Mire. This song is really more of it has to do with the person, kind of the main character in the story, who is slowly dying. Maybe his body's kind of rotting from some sort of disease, and he's kind of looking back on mistakes he made in following the devil, I guess. It's a really interesting vibe to it. It has this orchestral accompaniment to it that you'd have to hear it, but it actually kind of reminds me of like a James Bond kind of vibe to it. It's really unusual, but that's one of the things I like of the band is just some of the uniqueness to their sound. Track number 4 is called Atonement, and this is a really cool kind of trippy vibe to it. It kind of sounds like, I don't know, reminds me of almost like that Jim Morrison and the Doors kind of a vibe to the music. Almost a little bit of Middle Eastern feel in parts of it, real mellow, and like I said, kind of trippy sounding. The song Atonement basically has to do with dying and waking up, finding yourself in a ghost form. Track number 5 is Reverie / Harlequin Forest, kind of a combination of tunes here, and really it's just kind of simple. It has to do with basically delving into insanity and the journey into that. Track number 6 is Hours of Wealth. It has like a fairly long intro to it that seems almost like a completely different song. It's very instrumental, and then when it comes to the song with the singing itself, it's very intimate feeling. It's really mostly just Michael and this organ accompaniment. It's really actually quite beautiful, but like I said, very intimate feeling. You would never guess that this is the same guy who is doing the death metal vocals on Bang of the Hounds, but just check out how diverse this band really is.
Looking through my window, I seem to recognize all the people passing by, but I'm alone and far from home. Nobody knows me. Never heard me say goodbye. Never shall I speak to anyone again. All days are in darkness and I'm biding my time. Once I am sure of my task, I will rise again.
And track number 7 is The Grand Conjuration. Has to do with the original story again, and this is basically the man kind of saying that he can't deal anymore with the guilt and the anguish of killing his mother, and so he basically is summoning the devil, hoping to make a deal in order to get rid of some of the pain that he's feeling on the inside. The album closes with another very intimate song. This is one that you would definitely describe as hauntingly beautiful. Almost a Knights in White Satin kind of vibe to it. This is called Isolation Years, and it's basically, you know, a little different, but this is a man who is reading a suicide note from a woman that he loved. Altogether, just an amazing album. The artwork on this is an artist named Travis Smith, who did not only did the cover, but he did this little small lyric booklet with just this cool art on the front there. There's also this poster that comes with it. Let me put this aside. So there's your Opeth poster. Smoky candle look to it, and then even the two LPs, they have a nice. If you look at the center, you know, the art that's on there. See if we can get that in there. And then there's one other one here. Just, you know, hauntingly beautiful artwork to go with the hauntingly beautiful music. So again, Music on Vinyl has done a couple of Opeth's albums. I have a few actually, and just beautiful work on this. So if you've never heard this band before, you need to check it out. Go get yourself a copy of this. That is going to be it for the Honored Metal. So let's move on to the end of the show.
So I've said it before and I will say it again. You get nothing for nothing. Expect it when you're backseat driving and your hands ain't on the wheel. You are watching Medal of Honor with Reverend Dave Wallace. Enjoy.